Hello, everyone. Let's start the discussion on Supreme Court and its establishment, part 2. When we talk about the establishment of the Supreme Court, the appointment and removal of judges of the Supreme Court is very, very important to understand because of the fact that how the judges are appointed and the fact that how a judge can be removed from his service, from his office, becomes very, very significant, very, very important, and very relevant to decide a very essential aspect which is known as independence of the judiciary, to ensure that the courts, that the judges, that judiciary as an institution functions in an independent manner and is separate from the other two organs of the government, organs of the state, that is executive and legislature. It can be ensured only and only with the fact that whether judiciary is independent or not. And this very factor is decided from two relevant aspects. First is how the judges are selected and appointed, and the second is how the judges are removed or how the judges can be removed from their office, from their positions. So, in the aspect of appointment of judges and removal of judges, in part 1, we have discussed about the establishment of the Supreme Court, a bit about its evolution, the number of judges in the Supreme Court, and also about the appointment mechanism, which means appointment by the president, and how the collegium system works, how the collegium system functions. In this regard, there is another very significant institutional development that took place, which is known as the National Judicial Appointments Commission. This institution, this constitutional institution or body, was formed with the intention, with the purpose to function as an institution for the appointment and removal of judges in India. And this was supposed to replace the collegium system in place. So, in this particular part, we will discuss what exactly was this National Judicial Appointments Commission, what was its relevance, what are the judges' case, and the evolution of collegium and its relation with National Judicial Appointments Commission. The introduction of the NJAC, which is National Judicial Appointments Commission, it was proposed as a constitutional body to replace the collegium system for the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts. And the legal framework of the same, this was enacted through the Constitution 99th Amendment Act 2014 and National Judicial Appointments Commission Act 2014. Both of these were enactments made in the year 2014, and through these two enactments, this National Judicial Appointments Commission was formally made as a constitutional body for which a separate statute was also passed, which is known as the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act 2014. As discussed and mentioned, thus that this NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, it was proposed as a constitutional body to replace the collegium system, and this was for the purpose of appointment of the judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts. The removal part was not really dealt with this particular, dealt with this NJAC, because removal part was kept out of it. This NJAC was mainly intended to include and to talk about the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court. The purpose and intention of bringing this NJAC, it was the questions which have been raised against the working pattern of the collegium system, because the collegium basically raises certain constitutional questions, and the biggest constitutional question which is being raised in terms of functioning and working of the collegium system is who the judges appoint the judges in India. The judges appoint the judges in India. Technically, the judges are appointed by the president, but the selection, the recommendation is in the hands of collegium. So, literally, what happens is the judges or the group of senior most judges, they select, they pick and choose, and then they send the names to the president for appointment of judges to the High Court and Supreme Court. So, because this constitutional question has been in place since a long time, that if the judges appoint the judges or recommend the names of the judges to the president for appointment, and it is done by the collegium consists of judges, it has raised several questions in terms of transparency of functioning, the way or pattern of functioning, and to some extent, even allegations of favoritism on collegium has been raised. Although, in terms of if we look into the background of how and why collegium system was brought, it was brought to ensure the very independence of judiciary. It was brought to ensure that there is no favorite placement in the judiciary, to ensure that there is separation of power, to ensure that independence of judiciary remains in place. It was for these reasons that collegium system was propounded when it was brought. But after a long journey, which started somewhere around in the year 2001, several attempts were made in the parliament to pass the bill and the constitutional amendment concerning National Judicial Appointments Commission. But ultimately, it could be passed in the year 2014. And then finally in 2014, through a Constitutional Amendment Act which is known as the Constitution 99th Amendment Act 2014, along with the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act 2014, the NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, was formed. Now talking about, as discussed, why was NJAC introduced? To bring transparency and accountability in judicial appointments, to address the criticisms of the collegium system, such as it is functioning in an opaque manner, it is elitist and lacking checks, to ensure broader representation by including non-judicial members in the process. The National Judicial Appointments Commission was introduced. The composition of NJAC, if we talk about the constitutional provision concerning NJAC, so because this was a Constitutional Amendment Act, the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act 2014, the Constitution was amended. Article 124A, Article 124, capital A, as you can see, was introduced in the Constitution just after Article 124. And in Article 124A, this NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, was introduced as a constitutional body. If we talk about the composition of the NJAC, it was a 6-member committee which consisted of the Chief Justice of India as its chairperson, 2 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court. Let me tell you, if we look into this particular aspect, if we look into the composition, the first 2, the Chief Justice of India and the 2 senior-most judges, basically these are the 3 people, and these 3 judges, the CJI and the senior-most 2 judges of the Supreme Court, they form the collegium at the union side, at the Supreme Court, and these 3 judges are responsible for appointment and for the selection, for appointment and for transfer of judges of the High Court. I'll repeat, these 3 members at the present, this situation existed even previously, even today. The 3 members consisting of the Chief Justice of India and 2 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court, they are responsible for appointment and transfer of High Court judges, the 3-member collegium. But if we talk about the selection for the appointment of a judge as a Supreme Court judge, the collegium consists of 5 members. It consists of 5 members. the composition of NJC, other than these three judges, that is the Chief Justice of India and the two senior most Supreme Court judges, it consisted of, or it comprised of, the Union Law Minister or the Union Minister with the portfolio of Ministry of Law and Justice. And these were the four members. And other than this, two eminent persons were also supposed to be part of this NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission. And these two eminent persons were to be nominated by a committee of, the committee would consist of the Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister of India, and the leader of opposition in Lok Sabha. So understand the composition. Three judges, CJI, Chief Justice of India, and two senior most judges. These will be three ex officio members. Ex officio means the CJI, whoever becomes the CJI will automatically ex officio become the member of the NJSC. Whosoever becomes two senior most judges of the Supreme Court in terms of hierarchy, they will become a part of the NJSC, National Judicial Appointments Commission. Even the Law Minister was supposed to be an ex officio position. Whoever handles the portfolio of Ministry of Law and Justice as the Union Minister will be a member of the National Judicial Appointments Commission. These were the four members. But other than these four, two more eminent persons were supposed to be a part of this NJAC. These two eminent members were to be appointed by a committee, another committee which will consist of three people: the Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister, and the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha or House of the People. Now, this committee of three members will decide who will be two more eminent persons to be appointed in the NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission. So, this was roughly the composition of the National Judicial Appointments Commission. What were the functions? What were supposed to be the functions of NJAC? This was mentioned in Article 124, capital B. This was also a provision which was introduced through the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. The functions of NJAC, it consisted of recommending names for appointment as Supreme Court and High Court judges. This committee, this NJAC, was supposed to recommend the names to the President of India. Evaluating the suitability of candidates, the NJAC was supposed to evaluate that which particular practicing advocate or which particular judicial officer or a High Court judge is eligible to become a Supreme Court judge or a High Court judge. The commission, the National Judicial Appointments Commission, NJAC, was also bestowed with the function to recommend the transfer of High Court judges. If you are aware of the fact that the High Court judges can be transferred in India from one High Court to another High Court. So this was also supposed to be a recommending authority or power of the NJAC. Objective of NJAC was to address the lack of transparency in the collegium system, bring in executive and public oversight in judicial appointments. Because, see, if you look into the functions of NJAC, it was almost the same as the functions of the collegium. What collegium does at present? Recommends the appointment, names for appointment as Supreme Court, High Court judges and transfer from one High Court to another High Court. NJAC was also supposed to do the same function, but instead of the three-member collegium, which consisted only of judges, NJAC attempted to bring in a representative from the executive and also a public oversight in the judicial appointments by the two eminent persons. This was basically to ensure merit-based selection rather than judicial exclusivity, because along with, and in fact, even in the NJAC, the majority consisted of only judges. The majority consisted of the Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges. Out of 6, 3 members were still judges. One was a direct member of the executive, the cabinet, the union government, and the two eminent persons. So, collegium, while collegium consists of, or it functions with judicial exclusivity, NJAC was targeted. It had the objective to bring in executive and public oversight in judicial appointments. But then, the National Judicial Appointments Commission, the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, and the NJAC Act of 2014 was challenged in the Supreme Court of India in the year 2015. And in the year 2015, the Supreme Court of India, in the case of Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India. I repeat, the Supreme Court of India in 2015, in the case of Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, which is also known as the fourth judge's case. In this particular case, the Supreme Court Constitution Bench, which consisted of 5 judges, through a majority of 4:1, strike down the National Judicial Appointments Commission. The Supreme Court, with a majority of 4:1, which means 4 judges gave the judgment in favor of striking down the NJAC, while 1 judge gave a minority opinion, a dissenting opinion, to validate the National Judicial Appointments Commission. So, the NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, was struck down by the Supreme Court in the year 2015. The reasons and judicial rationale, the key reasons for invalidation or striking down. First is violation of judicial independence. The Supreme Court believed in the fact that inclusion of executive, that is the law minister, and non-judicial members means the 2 eminent persons, this would dilute the independence of the judiciary. The very reason why collegium was propounded in the year 1993 to ensure judicial independence. The Supreme Court said that now if we allow NJAC to come and function, this would certainly violate the judicial independence again. The second question was that it violated the basic structure doctrine. The court held that judicial primacy in appointments is part of the basic structure of the Constitution, because the Constitution, Article 124A, Article 124, it already says that the President will appoint, but the President shall consult the Chief Justice of India. And this shall consult was interpreted in the second judge's case by the Supreme Court to include collegium. The court in this case said that if you allow the appointment of the judges or selection of judges by a body consisting of executive members and non-judicial members, this would be violative of the basic structure doctrine. Then, eminent persons clause was a major point of conflict. The Supreme Court said that the method of selection and role of eminent persons was vague and susceptible to political influence, because the committee which was supposed to appoint 2 eminent persons in the NJAC, the committee consisted of only 1 judge, which is the Chief Justice of India, and 2 political persons. One was the Prime Minister and the other was leader of opposition. So in this context, in this regard, the Supreme Court said that the eminent persons clause is also vague. And then the Supreme Court said that it lacks adequate safeguards and veto power. No clear process to protect judicial integrity was mentioned in the NJAC, and to protect the judicial integrity from political or any sort of external pressure. I am again repeating, the reason why collegium system was propounded was for the reason to ensure that judicial appointments in India remain independent and they are not influenced by any sort of political pressure or external pressure. So these were the key reasons and rationale for striking down the National Judicial Appointments Commission in the 4 judges case of 2015. As the outcome, the NJAC Act 2014 and the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, which introduced Article 124 capital A, Article 124 capital B, they were absolutely completely struck down as unconstitutional, and the collegium system got revived and remains in place with suggestions for reform. So it got revived, but yes, of course, the Supreme Court said that we need to, give some attempts. We need to, give some efforts for ensuring that the collegium system functions in a transparent manner, in a better and efficient manner. So the attempts have been made since that date. For instance, a particular aspect known as Memorandum of Procedure, MOP, has been released. The MOP, Memorandum of Procedure, it consists of the process that how the Collegium of the Supreme Court will function for the selection and recommendation of the names of the judges to be appointed by the President then. And this was the basic outcome. If we briefly talk about the dissenting opinion given by the only one judge, as I said, it was a 5 judges Constitution Bench decision, which was given by the majority of 4:1. So we must know what did the one single dissenting opinion judge say. So the dissenting opinion in this case was given by Justice J. Chalmeshwar, and he dissented and said that NJC would enhance transparency and accountability in judicial appointments and could coexist with judicial independence if implemented carefully. He said that NJC is not bad in nature. It's not bad in law. It's just something that we have to implement it very carefully. And if implemented carefully, it will certainly bring more accountability, more transparency in judicial appointments. So this was the dissenting opinion, but of course, the majority opinion was considered. And considering that the NJC Act and the 1999 Constitutional Amendment Act, the National Judicial Appointments Commission altogether was struck down and collegium system was revived again. Let's now briefly look into the judges case, because we have been referring to the judges case even in the part 1, even in part 2. We have just now mentioned that the National Judicial Appointments Commission NJAC was struck down by the Supreme Court in the 4 judges case, which is known as the name of the case is Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India. So the 4 judges case, if you look into these, what were the 4 judges cases? The first judges case was in the year 1981, which is known as SP Gupta versus Union of India, AIR 1982 SC 149. In this particular case, it was held that executive had primacy in judicial appointments and the opinion of the CJI was not binding on the President. It emphasized on consultation, that consultation does not mean concurrence. So let me tell you briefly. In 1981, this controversy arose when the case was filed in the Supreme Court within the name of SP Gupta versus Union of India and was termed as the first judges case. In this particular case, the collegium system, the appointment of judges by the President, by the government, it was questioned, because we are aware of the fact that President in India functions and works on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, that is the Prime Minister and the ministers, the Council of Ministers of the Union. The provision in the Constitution, Article 124, it only said the President shall appoint, and only other than in the case of appointment of the Chief Justice of India, which means in all other appointments, for appointment of all High Court judges, for appointment of all Supreme Court judges, the President shall consult the Chief Justice of India. That is what Article 124 said even then. It even says the same now. The text is absolutely the same since 1950, since the Constitution has been enforced, drafted and enforced. It has not been changed. So, the question which was raised in the first judge's case was that whether the President, when the President has to consult, the President shall consult the CJI, what if the Chief Justice of India raises a red flag? What if the Chief Justice of India objects to the opinion of the President? What if the Chief Justice of India, in this process of consultation, what if the Chief Justice of India says to the President that do not appoint this person as a High Court judge or as a Supreme Court judge because of certain reasons? The Supreme Court in this first judge's case in 1981 in SP Gupta versus Union of India said that the opinion of the Chief Justice of India was not binding on the President. It is only recommendatory in nature, it is only consultative in nature. And consultation does not mean concurrence. The President shall consult, but the President will consider only his own decision or her own decision as full and final. The President is not bound to consider what has been recommended by the CJI, the Chief Justice of India. The President is never ever bound to accept, the decision given by the opinion given by the Chief Justice of India. So, in 1981, the first judge's case is said that the appointment mechanism, that is appointment selection and appointment by the President, on its own will remain in place, will continue in place. Then in 1993 came the second judge's case, which is known as the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, 1993, 4 SCC 441. Just for your kind reference, these citations of the cases, I'll briefly quickly tell you the full forms. AIR means All India Reporter, which is a reporter which reports the Supreme Court and High Court judgments. So in the All India Report judgment, if you look into it, you can find the judgment physically mentioned in the books and also in the online platforms. Similarly, in the second judge's case citation, if you see 1993 for SCC, this is Supreme Court cases. This is another, reporter. So in the second judge's case, this particular judgment is known as the particular turning point in the appointment of judges in India, because the second judge's case completely changed the scenario forever. Till the second judge's case or before the second judge's case in 1993, as per Article 124, the process was very simple. The president will choose, the president will finalize that these are the people I am going to appoint as a High Court judge or as a Supreme Court judge, or transfer one High Court judge from one High Court to another High Court. This was supposed to be the president's task, which means the task of the president based on the aid and advice of the government of India. And after finalizing this list, the president shall consult the Chief Justice of India, only consult. Even if the CJI objects to something or says not to appoint somebody, the president was not bound to accept, which means the complete things were in the hands of the president. Selection, choosing, appointment, pick and choose, whatever. But the second judge's case in 1993 changed the scenario forever. The second judge's case overruled the first judge's case, and it led the foundation of the collegium system in India. It held that the Chief Justice of India's opinion, formed through consultation with senior judges, has primacy in appointments, which means now onwards, which means post the second judge's case, what will be the process? The process will be, now the selection will not be made by the president. Now the selection will be made by the Chief Justice of India along with two of his senior most judges of the Supreme Court, known as the Collegium. This body will be known as the Collegium. This Collegium will consist of the Chief Justice of India and the two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. And now onwards, second judge's case 1993 onwards, this Collegium will recommend the names to the president, and now the president's role was only shrinked, was only limited to appointing the High Court and Supreme Court judges, and to notify the appointment of and to notify the transfer of judges. The selection process, the authority to select, the authority to pick and choose was now transferred completely from the hands of the president and government to the hands of the Collegium, which consisted of the Chief Justice of India and the two senior most judges. And let me tell you, the same position, the same mechanism, the same process continues till date. Even today, the appointment mechanism remains the same. The Collegium, which consists of the Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges of the Supreme Court, recommends the names to the president for appointment. Moving ahead, in 1993, another case was brought to the Supreme Court, which is known as the third judge's case. And the name of the case is In Re Special Reference Number 1, 1998. 1998, 7 SCC 739. This was a presidential reference case under Article 143. As referred earlier, Article 143 provides the power to the President of India. Not exactly a power, but kind of one of the functions or powers of the President, that the President can ask the Supreme Court for a legal advice under Article 143, which is known as a presidential reference case. If the President is of the opinion that he has to take or she has to take a legal opinion from the Supreme Court, the President can give a presidential reference under Article 143 to the Supreme Court in this regard. Now, the Supreme Court is not bound to give the advice. The Supreme Court may reject or may give an advice in this regard. But the advice is given in the form of a judgment. So, in 1998, a presidential reference was made to the Supreme Court. The opinion, the advice given by the Supreme Court under Article 143 given to the President, it is known as the third judge's case. In the third judge's case, basically, collegium system and its constitutionality was challenged. The Supreme Court, interestingly, in 1998 third judge's case, said that collegium system shall continue. Collegium system shall continue, and in fact expanded the collegium to 5 judges. It said that now onwards, third judge's case onwards, for the appointment, selection and appointment of Supreme Court judges, the collegium will consist of not 3 judges, but it will consist of 5 judges. It will consist of the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. So this 5-member collegium will be responsible for selection of judges to the Supreme Court. Recommend the names for the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. Recommend these names to the President. But for the High Court appointment, the numbers will remain the same. For the appointment of High Court judges, it will still continue to be 3 in number. The Chief Justice of India and 2 senior most judges. The collegium will consist of 3 members for High Court judges appointment, selection and appointment, and for the Supreme Court, the collegium will consist of 5 judges. The same. See, CJI and 2 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, they will be common in both the collegiums. Collegium for selection of Supreme Court judges, CJI, and 2 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Like CJI, number 1 and number 2, 3 judges. For appointment, for selection of judges in the High Court. But for the selection of judges for the Supreme Court, selection and recommending the names to the President, the collegium will consist of 5 judges. CJI, judge number 1, number 2, number 3 and number 4 in seniority. So the third judge's case also reaffirmed the fact that collegium system will continue. And now came the fourth judge's case, which we discussed in the previous slide, which is known as Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, which struck down the National Judicial Appointments Commission as unconstitutional, and it reaffirmed the independence of the judiciary. It reaffirmed the collegium system as part of the basic structure doctrine. It said that collegium system will continue to select the judges and recommend the names to the President, and the appointment mechanism will remain the same. It's just that some memorandum of procedures must be brought to ensure that the appointment of judges by the collegium becomes more transparent, becomes more reasoned, etc. Now, this was in detail about the appointment of judges. Now, let's talk about another very, very essential aspect of independence of judiciary. As in the beginning, if you remember, I said that it was mentioned that for ensuring independence of judiciary, independence of courts, 2 things are important. One is to ensure that the judges are, the appointment mechanism, and the second is to ensure that the removal process is also rational in nature. So the appointment and removal, both these processes, these 2 decide the independence of the judiciary. So let's look into the constitutional process for removal of the judges. So when we discuss the constitutional process for the removal of judges, the provisions that deal with the constitutional basis for the removal of judges, Article 124 Clause 4 and 5 talk about the removal of Supreme Court judges, and Article 217, read along with Article 218, talks about the removal of High Court judges. What are the grounds for removal? For it is the same for, as we saw that the eligibility for appointment of Supreme Court and High Court judges, it was different. But the grounds for removal of High Court and Supreme Court judges, it is absolutely the same. The first, if we talk about the grounds for removal, there are only two aspects. First is proved misbehavior or incapacity. These are the only two grounds based on which a Supreme Court or High Court judge can be removed from his office. Proved misbehavior or incapacity. Who can initiate the removal procedure, removal process? First, a motion can be initiated in either House of Parliament, which requires signatures of minimum 100 of Lok Sabha member of parliaments or 100 members of parliament of the House of the People, from the House of the People, or if it is initiated in the Rajya Sabha, which is Council of States, a minimum of 50 member of parliaments have to sign and submit this motion. So it can be initiated either in House of the People, that is Lok Sabha, or it can also be initiated in the Council of States, that is Rajya Sabha. If the motion is to be initiated in the Lok Sabha, that is House of the People, a signature of minimum 100 members, sitting member of parliaments are required. It is required. Or if it is initiated in the Rajya Sabha, that is Council of States, a signature of minimum of 50 member of parliaments of the Rajya Sabha, it is required. One particular house will initiate the motion, and then after the further procedure is given in the next upcoming slides as well. One house will initiate, and then the inquiry and other process will go on, and then the voting will go on in one house, and then the voting in voting in the second house. Initiation, it is to be made only in one house. Either of the house can initiate a motion for the removal of a judge of the High Court or removal of a judge of the Supreme Court. Officially, the Constitution of India does not uses the word impeachment. Impeachment word is officially only used for the President of India, but this process is basically the process of removing by member of Parliament or House of Parliament. It is known as the process of impeachment. So the process of impeachment of a Supreme Court or High Court judges. It is to be first passed by both the Houses of Parliament, and then to be signed by the President of India under his or her seal and sign, and then the judge, a judge of the Supreme Court or judge of the High Court, can be removed. But what is the process after initiation in the Parliament? The first is, once it is initiated, once the motion is initiated, which means either 100 members in Lok Sabha or either 50 members in Rajya Sabha will sign and give it to their respective speaker, if it is House of the People Lok Sabha, or they will give it to the chairman if it is Council of the States, that is Rajya Sabha. Then the speaker or the chairman, they will completely go through the motion, whether it has been submitted in a proper format or not, whether it carries some allegations against the alleged judge or not, etc. If the speaker or the chairperson is of the opinion that the motion submitted lacks some procedural requirement, let's say the minimum number of signatures are not there, the format is not correct, or the allegations which have been made, they seem to be something not at all relevant, whatever, there can be certain reasons. The speaker or the chairman can either accept the motion or reject the motion. Of course, they have to give reason why they are accepting or why they are rejecting the motion. Once a motion has been admitted either by the Speaker of Lok Sabha or by the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, then an inquiry committee, which comprises of one sitting Supreme Court judge, one Chief Justice of a High Court, and a distinguished jurist. A committee will be appointed, a committee consisting of a Supreme Court judge, a Chief Justice of a High Court, and a distinguished jurist. This committee will investigate the charges which have been raised, the allegations against the judge of the High Court or the Supreme Court. If the committee finds that the charges are proved, then the motion will be debated in both the houses. If the committee finds out that yes, the charges against, let's say there is a corruption charge against the judge, suppose the corruption charge is with respect to some multi-crore scam or some land scam or anything, suppose, the committee will first of all investigate the charges against the judge, and the committee will then recommend that whether the charges are baseless or the charges are proven. If the committee recommends that yes, the charges are proven, then the motion will go to both the houses for debate. Because in parliament, nothing happens without debate. The member of parliaments who are representing their voters, their constituencies, the people of India, they have to discuss and debate the things and then vote on it. So once the charges are proven by the committee, the motion then goes to the houses of parliament for debate. Now, what is the parliamentary process and outcome for removal of judge? Voting requirement says that motion, first of all, must be passed after discussion and debate. So I hope you are following the process. First is to initiate the motion in either of the house, 100 in Lok Sabha or minimum 50 signatures in Rajya Sabha. Once the motion is initiated, a committee comprising of a Supreme Court judge, a Chief Justice of a High Court and a distinguished jurist will investigate the charges and will then recommend whether the charges are proven or not. If the charges are proven, the motion will then go back to the houses, both the houses of parliament for discussion and debate. Then after discussion and debate, the motion must be passed in both the houses of parliament by a special majority. Special majority and simple majority. The difference is simple majority means 50% plus 1. What we call, for example, if we are a class of 10 people, in this particular class, the majority will be 6 because 5 is 50% plus 1 is 6. 6 out of 10 is the majority. This is simple majority. But special majority in parliament means 2/3, a majority of 2/3 member present and voting. Minimum how many? 2/3 members present and voting of the total majority of the house is considered as a special majority. For example, if there are 90 people in a house, if there are 90 members in a house, a simple majority for 90 will be 50%, which is 45 plus 1, that is 46 is simple majority out of 90. But if you are considering a special majority out of 90, then it has to be minimum or 2/3 member. So for 2/3 special majority, you must have a vote of more than at least 60 members out of 90. 2/3 of 90 is 60. So 2/3 of members present and voting has to be considered for passing the motion. Present and voting means they must be present at that point of time in the house and they must be eligible to vote. They must be eligible to vote in that particular house. So 2/3 special majority means the total members present at the house at that point of time who can vote. Out of those total present members and eligible members to vote, 2/3 special majority members must pass the motion in both the houses, in Council of States Rajya Sabha as well as in House of the People Lok Sabha. Final step is, after successful passage in both the houses, the motion is presented to the President of India. Suppose if one house passes it with special majority, the other house could not get special majority. Out of 2/3 member, only 1/3 voted in favor of the motion, rest did not vote or rest voted against it. Or only a simple majority voted in favor of the motion to pass the motion, rest did not vote. So even if one particular house could not vote, could not pass the motion with 2/3, it will not go to the President. The motion will go to the President only after successfully passing through a special majority of present and voting in both the houses. Then the motion is presented to the President of India. The President, under his or her seal or sign, issues the order of removal of a High Court judge or removal of a Supreme Court judge. This is the only exclusive method to remove a judge of a High Court and Supreme Court. This ensures judicial independence. Because, it is very tough to remove a judge. So even if a judge of a High Court or a judge of a Supreme Court, even if he or she or they give a judgment against the government cannot remove them easily. The parliament can remove them, the president can remove them only if they have support of minimum 2/3 member special majority in the houses, in both the houses. Only then they can remove. So this ensures judicial independence, that even if a judge, even if a court firmly takes a decision, gives a decision against the government, he or she cannot be removed simply because they have given a decision against the government. Right. So this ensures judicial independence. Tough removal process ensures judicial independence. The fact is, no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has been removed so far in India. So no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has been removed so far in India. There have been two judges of the High Court previously, against whom there were many against whom impeachment process was initiated. There were two against whom the impeachment process almost came to a final stage. But before the houses could pass the impeachment motion against the judges, they themselves resigned, and therefore they could not be removed. So in India till date, no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has been removed so far through this particular process. The process is rigorous and very rare. It is quite rigorous and rare, and it is intended to prevent political misuse. So now let's move ahead with the practice questions, which are based on the aspects concerning the National Judicial Appointments Commission, the 4 judges cases, and the removal mechanism, the constitutional basis or process of the removal of the Supreme Court and High Court judges in India. So the first and second question is based on passage reading. So we'll read the passage and then we'll go to the question, and then we'll look into the solutions of the same. So the passage for questions 1 and 2, it reads as: the Supreme Court of India, established under Article 124 of the Constitution, is the highest judicial authority in the country. While the Constitution initially vested the power of appointment of judges in the President, this was subject to consultation with the Chief Justice of India and other judges. However, in the post-1993 judicial landscape, the collegium system evolved through the second and third judges' cases. The collegium ensures judicial primacy, and the President's role is largely formal. The 99 Constitutional Amendment and the NJAC Act attempted to reform this process, proposing a 6-member commission that included the law minister and 2 eminent persons. I'm giving you a minute to read this particular passage, a few seconds, just to go through the passage on your own as well. Okay. I hope you have gone through. So let's continue reading the passage. The passage for questions 1 and 2, it continues here. However, in the 4 judges case, that is 2015, the Supreme Court struck down the NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, as unconstitutional, reaffirming the collegium as part of the basic structure of the Constitution. The process of removal of judges is equally rigorous, requiring proven misbehavior or incapacity through a special majority in both houses of Parliament. So this is the passage for question number 1 and 2. This is the continuation, second part of the same passage. Yes, you can just take a few seconds to go through. Right. So now based on this passage, we have our question number 1. Question number 1 reads as: which of the following best explains why the NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission, was held unconstitutional in the 4 judges case? I repeat the question. The first question reads as: which of the following best explains why the National Judicial Appointment Commission was held unconstitutional in the 4 judges case? The first option is because it violated the doctrine of separation of powers by granting appointment powers solely to the executive. Second, it allowed the Prime Minister to unilaterally appoint judges without judicial consultation. Third, it compromised judicial independence by giving non-judicial members an equal say in judicial appointments. And the fourth, it failed to include the Chief Justice of India in the decision-making process. These are the 4 options. Just go through, take few seconds and decide which can be the best option, which particular option best explains the reason why National Judicial Appointment Commission was held unconstitutional in the 4 judges case. I hope you have gone through all the 4 options. So now let's find out the answer for it and the reason. Answer to question number 1 is the court. The answer is C. Option C, that the court. What is option C? Let's look into it. Because the NJC compromised judicial independence by giving non-judicial members an equal say in judicial appointments. If you remember, we have discussed it in detail. Total 6 members, 3 judicial members, 3 non-judicial members. So non-judicial members were getting an equal say in the appointment. 3 judges, Chief Justice and Supreme Court senior most judges, and the Law Minister 4th member. 2 eminent persons were also non-judicial members. So equal say to non-judicial members in the judicial appointments. The explanation of the same says that the court found that inclusion of the Law Minister and 2 eminent persons compromised judicial independence, violating the basic structure. This is the answer to question number 1. Now, based on the same passage that we read, let's look into question number 2. Question number 2 reads as, based on the passage, which of the following can be inferred about the current judicial appointment system in India? What is the current mechanism of appointment of judges in India? It is derived solely from constitutional text and free from judicial innovation. First option. It is immune to legislative amendment due to its incorporation in the Constitution's basic structure. Second option. Third option says that it grants the executive a decisive role in appointments and removals. And the fourth option, it is temporary and subject to change by a simple parliamentary majority. These are the 4 options. Just go through it and let's find out that based on the passage, which of the following can be inferred about the present current judicial appointment system in India. Let's find out the answer and the reason for the same. Answer to question number 2 is B, that the collegium system, though not in the constitutional text, it has been protected as part of the Constitution's basic structure and is thus immune to legislative override. As we read in the NJC order, in the opinion given in the National Judicial Appointments Commission case, the Supreme Court said that it is a part of the basic structure. The judicial independence is a part of the basic structure, and collegium system ensures the judicial independence. So therefore, although collegium system is not a part of the constitutional text, still it has been protected as part of the Constitution's basic structure and is thus immune to legislative override. So this is what can be inferred from the passage and the referred questions. Now let's talk about the other questions as well. Let's move to question number 3. Question number 3 is an assertion reasoning question. The assertion is, a judge of the Supreme Court can be removed only by an order of the President after a special majority in Parliament. The reason is Article 124, Clause 4 of the Constitution prescribes the procedure for removal of Supreme Court judges. This is the assertion and this is the reason. So we have 4 options over here. First is both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A, whether the reason is the correct explanation of the assertion or not. Second is both A and R are true independently, but the reason is not the correct explanation of A. C, A is true, assertion is true, but the reason is false. D, assertion is false, but reason is true. So now let's look into the answer to this particular assertion reasoning question. Answer to question number 3 is A. The removal answer A means both assertion and reasoning are correct and reason is the correct explanation of A. Because the removal process is indeed outlined in Article 124, Clause 4, and the President acts only after Parliament passes the motion with a special majority. So let's look into the assertion reasoning again. Yes, the assertion is also correct. Yes, the reason is also correct. And yes, the reason is correct explanation to assertion A. You can just have a look to answer number 3 as well again. Now let's move on to question number 4. Question number 4 says, which of the following correctly reflects the role of the Chief Justice of India, the CJI, in the process of judicial appointments to the higher judiciary post 1993, which means after 1993. The first is the CJI, Chief Justice of India, exercises a recommendatory role through the collegium system. The CJI has adjudicatory authority to decide disputes in the collegium by majority vote. The CJI's recommendation is binding on the President in all cases, including first-time nominations. And the fourth option is, the collegium is headed by the Chief Justice of India and functions through consultation with other senior judges. So we have to find out which of the four given statements are correct, or which of the following statements correctly reflects the role of the Chief Justice of India in the process of judicial appointments post 1993, which means post second judge's case. So options are A, only statement 1 and 4. Option B says statement 1, 2 and 4. Option C says statement 2, 3 and 4 are correct. And option D says all of the above are correct. Let's look into the answer and the reason for the same. Answer to question number 4 says A, which means statement 1 is correct and statement 2 is correct. Statement 2 is incorrect. Answer is option number A. Option number A, if we saw, only 1 and 4 are correct. See, option number A, statement 1 and statement 4. Statement 1 says the CJI exercises a recommendatory role through the collegium system. Of course, that is right. That is a correct statement. Why? Because even now, the collegium is not having the authority to appoint. As I told you repeatedly, the collegium still recommends, but the recommendation is of the nature of bindingness. That is another aspect. Earlier, the CJI was to be consulted by the president. Post 1993, CJI exercises a recommendatory role, and that too not individually. The recommendatory role through the collegium system. And fourth statement says the collegium is headed by the CJI, yes, and functions through consultation with other senior judges. That's right. Now we'll look into why statement 2 and 3 are incorrect. So see, statement 1 is correct because CJI has a recommendatory role, not final or adjudicatory authority. Statement 2 is incorrect because collegium works through consensus, not adjudication. Okay, it's not a judicial forum. It's not a judgment giving forum. They work through consensus and not adjudication. So collegium recommends. When collegium recommends, it recommends through consensus. It is not to be mentioned that in the collegium of 3 judges, 2 have agreed, 1 disagreed. In the collegium of 5 judges, 3 agreed, 2 did not agree. No. The collegium recommends, which means it is to be believed that collegium has recommended something. It has recommended through a consensus. Statement 3 is also incorrect, that the president may return a recommendation once for reconsideration, not binding at first instance. This is not a correct statement. The president, generally, if we talk about the process, it is binding on the president. And if the president sends it for recommendation, that is a different aspect. But to state statement 3, if we look into it, the CJI's recommendation is binding on the president in all cases, including first-time nominations. This is an incorrect statement because the president may return a recommendation once for reconsideration, not binding at the first instance. If we look into the process of collegium, and this is all absolutely as per the Supreme Court of India Collegium Sections website, which clearly mentions the process and procedure. And the process and procedure also mentions this particular aspect, that the first recommendation sent by the collegium to the president can be returned by the collegium, president to the collegium, and then the collegium will reconsider. If the collegium then sends it back to the president again with the same recommendation, then the president is bound to appoint. But if the collegium says that, okay, we are reconsidering our statement, reconsidering our recommendation, then the collegium may drop the idea or may give us a different recommendation. So first time, it is not binding on the president, which means generally, see, most of the cases, in the first recommendation, it said the president appoints or may, appoint after some time. But in some cases, the president may send it back to the collegium for reconsideration. And statement 4 is correct because the collegium is headed by the CJI, functioning in consultation with the senior most judges. Now quickly look into the question number 5. Which of the following conditions is essential for the successful impeachment of a High Court judge? The first statement is that it says a motion signed by 100 members of the House of the People, that is Lok Sabha, and 50 members of the Rajya Sabha must be passed by a simple majority in both houses. Second, charges must be proved by a committee of 3 jurists, and then the motion must be passed by a special majority in both houses. Third, the Chief Justice of India must first approve the charges before the Parliament debates them. And the fourth is President must recommend the motion to Parliament after consulting the Prime Minister. These are the 4 conditions mentioned. So now let's look into the fact that which of the following conditions are essential for the successful impeachment. If we look into the essential condition, it is B. B says that charges must be proved by a committee of 3 jurists. If you remember, we discussed the committee will consist of a sitting Supreme Court judge, a sitting High Court judge, and a distinguished jurist. And after the charges are proved by a committee of 3 jurists, then the motion must be passed by a special majority in both houses. This is the only essential requirement, essential condition out of the 4 given conditions. Why? Because if you look into the first, it is not correct because it says a motion signed must be passed by a simple majority. That is incorrect because it has to be signed, it has to be passed by a special majority. The other two, if you look into the third one, it says the Chief Justice of India must first approve the charges before Parliament debates them. Not the CJI, but the committee. And then the last says that the President must recommend the motion to Parliament after consulting the Prime Minister. This is also incorrect. So the only essential condition is the third one, the second one, that is B. So therefore, the explanation says that removal requires a judicial inquiry, committee's findings of guilt, followed by a passage of the motion by a special majority in both houses before the President issues the order.